When most of us hear the word desert, we picture the same thing. Endless yellow sand, burning heat, almost no water, and barely anything alive. Deserts feel like nature's dead ends, places where life tried and failed. Once land turns into desert, we usually assume that's the end of the story. But what if that idea is completely wrong? In Inner Mongolia, in a place called the Dalat Banner Desert, something happened that sounds almost ridiculous at first. This wasn't a miracle created by giant machines or futuristic technology. It wasn't solved by planting millions of trees either. Instead, this desert was revived by rabbits. Not dozens, not thousands, 1.2 million rabbits. A land once described as hopeless, dry, and collapsing was slowly transformed into green fields, living soil, and thriving communities because of rabbits hopping through the sand. If that sounds unbelievable, that's because it should. Rabbits are small, fragile animals. Deserts are harsh, unforgiving environments. On paper, they should never work together. So the obvious questions appear immediately. Why rabbits? Why here? And how did this succeed when so many desert projects around the world failed? This isn't a story about luck. It isn't even just a story about animals. It's about rethinking how nature works, and how humans work with it instead of against it. What happened in Dalat Banner wasn't simple, and it wasn't accidental. It was the result of ideas, risks, and a completely different way of seeing deserts. Not as dead land, but as land waiting for the right system. To understand why this matters and why it could change how we fight desertification everywhere, we first need to look at how serious the problem really is and how close it came to getting completely out of control. To understand why the Dalat Banner story matters, we need to zoom out, far beyond one desert and one experiment. Because desertification isn't a local problem. It's a slow, creeping crisis that has been spreading across the planet for decades. In the 1990s, China was already facing one of the worst desertification situations in the world. At that time, over 1.7 million square kilometers of land had turned into desert. To put that into perspective, that's an area larger than many countries combined. Land that once supported farms, villages, and entire ecosystems. And it didn't stop there. As China entered the 21st century, desertification continued to expand by more than 10,000 square kilometers every single year. By 2015, the total desertified land had grown to 2.62 million square kilometers, nearly one-third of the entire country. This wasn't just sand spreading quietly, it was pushing people out of their homes and destroying livelihoods. The human cost was impossible to ignore. Dust storms began reaching major cities, turning skies yellow and choking the air. Farmland lost its productivity, forcing families to abandon land that had fed them for generations. Poverty followed the sand, especially in rural areas where people had few alternatives. What made the situation even more dangerous was the pace. Desertification doesn't explode overnight like a flood or earthquake. It spreads slowly, which makes it easier to ignore until it's too late. By the time the damage is obvious, restoring the land becomes far more difficult and expensive. Traditional solutions simply couldn't keep up. Planting trees helped in some areas, but many of them died due to lack of water. Wind barriers worked temporarily, but didn't fix the soil underneath. Year after year, effort after effort, the desert kept advancing. This growing pressure forced China to confront a hard truth. Fighting deserts with isolated solutions wasn't enough. Something deeper had to change, not just in technique, but in thinking itself. And that moment of rethinking would come from an unexpected voice, challenging the very foundation of how desert control had been approached for decades. For a long time, the logic behind fighting deserts seemed simple. If sand is spreading, plant more trees. Trees block wind, hold soil, and create shade. On the surface, it sounds like the perfect solution. So for years, massive afforestation projects were launched across China's desert regions. But there was a problem. Many of those trees didn't survive. In deserts, water is scarce, soil is weak, and temperatures are extreme. Planting trees without changing the environment underneath is like building a house on sand. It may stand for a while, but eventually it collapses. In some areas, trees died faster than they could be replanted, turning well-funded projects into short-lived victories. It was at this point that Qian Shuisun, one of China's most respected scientists, made a bold and uncomfortable argument. He didn't say tree planting was useless, but he said it was incomplete. According to Qian, desertification couldn't be solved by ecology alone. It had to be solved as a system. His idea was simple but powerful. Deserts don't just need plants, they need functioning industries. Without economic value, no project could last. Grasslands, farmland, and animal husbandry had to work together, creating a cycle where land restoration and human livelihoods supported each other. Think of it like keeping a machine running. Trees are one gear, but without the others, the system stalls. At first, this thinking faced skepticism. Many believed deserts were too fragile for economic activity. Others feared development would only make things worse. But slowly, this system-level approach began reshaping policies and investment strategies. Instead of asking, "How do we stop the sand?" a new question emerged: how do we make the desert useful without destroying it? That question opened the door to a new group of players, people willing to take risks, invest real money, and turn theory into action. And that's when entrepreneurs began walking into the desert. Once the idea shifted from simply protecting deserts to building systems inside them, something unexpected happened. The desert stopped looking like a dead end and started looking like a blank slate. Chinese entrepreneurs were among the first to act on this new way of thinking. While others still saw endless sand and failure, they saw opportunity. Not easy profit, but long-term potential. And they were willing to put real money on the line to test it. These weren't small experiments. Investors committed hundreds of millions of yuan, targeting massive stretches of land that had been abandoned for years. One major plan focused on building a 300,000-acre salix, or willow base, with the goal of eventually restoring millions of surrounding acres. This was a high-risk move. Deserts don't forgive mistakes easily. Why salix? Because willow trees are tough. They grow fast, tolerate poor soil, and are excellent at fixing sand and blocking wind. But even this wasn't enough on its own. Entrepreneurs quickly realized that trees without an economic role would face the same fate as past projects: short-term success, long-term failure. So the question became critical. What kind of industry could survive in a desert, and at the same time improve it? Crops struggled. Large livestock required too much water. Heavy infrastructure was expensive and fragile. The system needed something small, adaptable, and efficient, something that could live with the desert rather than fight it. That search led to an idea so unusual that many dismissed it immediately. An animal that people associated with farms and grasslands, not sand dunes and dry wind. This was the moment when attention turned to a creature no one expected to become a desert engineer: the rabbit. At first, the idea sounded almost laughable. Rabbits in the desert? To most people, rabbits are soft, delicate animals that belong in green fields or backyard farms, not in a harsh environment where water is scarce and temperatures swing wildly. But this wasn't just any rabbit. After careful research, Chinese scientists and entrepreneurs introduced the Rex rabbit, a breed originally from France. Unlike common rabbits, Rex rabbits have short, dense fur and a strong tolerance for dry, clean environments. In fact, humid conditions are more dangerous to them than dryness. That single trait made the desert surprisingly suitable for them. Still, expectations were low. Many doubted whether rabbits could survive long-term, let alone play a role in restoring land. But once introduced, the Rex rabbits began doing something unexpected. They behaved like natural soil workers. Rex rabbits dig. A lot. As they searched for grass roots and hay beneath the sand, they loosened compacted soil that had been hard and lifeless for years. This digging increased soil airflow, allowing moisture and nutrients to move more freely underground. It's similar to how farmers till land before planting, except here, the rabbits were doing it naturally, day after day. Even more importantly, Rex rabbits don't eat hard-shelled seeds. Those seeds pass through their digestive systems and return to the ground with their waste, now wrapped in natural fertilizer. What looks like simple animal behavior quietly became a powerful ecological tool. Against expectations, the rabbits didn't just survive, they thrived. Their population grew rapidly, their impact multiplied, and the desert began changing in ways that scientists hadn't seen before. But survival wasn't the real breakthrough. The real breakthrough was what happened next, when millions of small actions combined into a full ecological chain reaction. What makes the Rex rabbit story so powerful isn't just that the rabbits survived in the desert. It's how their everyday behavior quietly rebuilt the land from the ground up. Think of the desert soil like a sealed concrete floor. Water can't sink in, air can't move, and roots can't spread. That's why most plants fail. But when Rex rabbits dig for roots and grass, they break that seal. Their tunnels loosen the soil, creating tiny pathways for air and moisture. Over time, this turns hard sand into living soil. Then comes the second link in the chain: nutrient cycling. Rabbit droppings are rich in organic matter. Mixed with undigested seeds, they act like ready-made fertilizer pellets. When rain does fall, even briefly, seeds now have nutrients and oxygen waiting for them. This dramatically increases plant survival. In some restored areas, vegetation survival rates reached over 96%. That number is almost unheard of in desert environments, where plants often die before taking root. As grasses and shrubs grow, they anchor the soil, reducing wind erosion and stopping sand from drifting. Salix plants play a key role here. Their roots stabilize dunes and block strong winds, while their leaves and branches provide food and shelter for the rabbits. The rabbits, in return, maintain soil health and spread seeds. Neither works well alone. Together, they form a self-reinforcing loop. This is what makes the system different from traditional desert projects. There's no constant outside force required, no endless replanting, no heavy machinery fighting nature. Instead, the ecosystem maintains itself through balance. Slowly, patches of green began connecting. Bare land turned into grassland. Grassland turned into oases. And once the land started producing life again, something else followed: opportunity. Once the desert began to recover, the biggest question was no longer, can this work? But can this last? The answer came not from scientists, but from the people living there. As vegetation spread and the land stabilized, Rex rabbit breeding grew into a full industry. Local farmers who once depended on unstable crops or government aid now had a reliable source of income. On average, households involved in rabbit breeding began earning around $20,000 a year, a life-changing amount in many rural desert regions. The rabbits provided value in multiple ways. Their meat became a common, affordable protein source. Their fur, especially Rex fur, is highly prized for making high-end clothing due to its softness and density. Nothing was wasted, which made the system efficient and profitable. Beyond farming, new industries emerged. Restored desert landscapes attracted ecotourism, researchers, and media attention. The region gained international recognition, including being named a Global Desert Ecological Economic Demonstration Zone by the United Nations Environment Program. That recognition validated what many once doubted: environmental restoration and economic growth don't have to compete. They can reinforce each other. What made this model succeed where aid-based projects often fail was ownership. Local people weren't just protecting the land, they depended on it. Their income rose as the ecosystem improved, creating a natural incentive to maintain balance rather than exploit it. The desert was no longer a burden, it became an asset. And with success proven on the ground, attention shifted toward the future and how this approach could be scaled, improved, and shared with the rest of the world. The story of Dalat Banner doesn't end with rabbits or oases. Its real impact lies in what it teaches us about solving environmental problems in the modern world. As the project expanded, China began combining this ecological model with technology. Drones were used to monitor vegetation growth. Big data helped track soil conditions, animal populations, and land recovery patterns. Instead of guessing, decision makers could see what worked and adjust in real time. This led to the creation of the Belt and Road Desert Green Economic Innovation Center, designed to refine and share these methods. But the biggest lesson isn't technological, it's philosophical. For decades, humans tried to fight deserts, block them, push them back, overpower them. Dalat Banner shows a different approach. Cooperate with nature. Use animals, plants, and economics together, so each part supports the others. When systems are balanced, nature does most of the work itself. This model isn't limited to China. Many countries across Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia face similar challenges. The idea isn't to copy rabbits everywhere, it's to copy the thinking. Understand local ecosystems, create economic value, and let people become protectors because their future depends on it. So the next time we look at a desert and think it's lifeless, we should ask a better question. What system could bring this land back to life? If you found this story surprising or inspiring, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share. Stories like this remind us that even the most hopeless landscapes can change when we're willing to rethink the rules. And sometimes, all it takes to start that change is a rabbit.